I think Michelle is now going to start recording. We've got a number of new members, so particular welcome to them and also to those returning to this committee. Michelle, are there any apologies?
We've had one apology from Adam Davis.
Thank you. Are there any others? No. Good. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of personal interest and prejudicial interests? I'm taking that as a no, so thank you very much. As we know, it's a prohibition of whip votes. And the next item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting. So those people who were members of the committee, last, would you like to, I'll go through each page to see what you think. Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Could I have, if there aren't any comments, could I have a proposer that they be taken as a true record? Sue Jones, are you all agreed? Okay, thank you very much indeed. You will have got in your pack a letter from the previous meeting, which was a record of the points that we wanted to raise or inform the cabinet member, and I'll come on to that a little later, but you've all got a copy of that letter for your information. The next item, we're going through this very, very quickly. At that rate, we should be out of here in 10 minutes, but I don't think it'll work like that. Is public question time, and no public questions have been received. The next item on the agenda is the role of the Education Scrutiny Panel, and I think this is really more for new members, not really for existing members, or the I don't say old members, but former members who are back. I hope I won't read the whole thing, but if anybody has any comments to make on 1, 2, and 3, let me know. No. The next item then, number 4, is pre-meetings and questioning. Sometimes we will hold a short pre-meeting a few days or so before panel meetings to prepare questions, etc. On communication, panel members will be included in all communication about the panel. Okay, a draft letter will be circulated to panel members following each meeting for comments, and the final version will then be sent to the cabinet member. So everybody will have an opportunity to have a say what needs to go into that letter. And when we've all agreed that letter, that will then go off to the cabinet member. The cabinet member's response will be circulated to the panel when received and included in the agenda pack for the next meeting, together with the draft minutes. Okay. Can I remind you that scrutiny is non-political and everyone is expected to behave in line with a code of conduct, which has always been the case certainly on this committee. Meeting times, we normally meet at 4 o'clock. Today was a slight deviation from that because this room was being used, but we normally start at 4 and we take about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on the volume of work to be discussed. This time we may need to move this if we are actually going to visit a school and so on. So that might be earlier and so on. But we'll talk about that as we go through the year. Are there any other points that anybody would like to raise? No hands up. Was that Mike?
Yes,
did you?
Yes. Sorry, Linda. Thank you. I think that's really helpful. I just wondered if it would be possible for the agenda of the education, is it called the Policy Delivery Committee, to be circulated to the Scrutiny Committee as well when that comes out?
Sure, Mike. Yeah, good point. And I think it could be quite good to do it the other way around as well. Is for this to be sent to possibly members of the policy committee as well. because yesterday there was one issue that came up, and of course it's going to be discussed by this committee late in due course. So very, very good point, Mike. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Lyndon, are you talking? We can't hear you.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, the next item on the agenda is the update on the Education Directorate, and that is with Councillor Robert Smith, the Cabinet Member, and Helen Morgan-Rees, the Director of Education. So I welcome them, and in addition there'll be Sarah Hughes, the Team Manager for Education Strategy, and of course Rodri Jones, the Head of Achievement. So they'll also be part of that. Involved. So Robert or Helen, who wants to go first?
Thank you, Chair. If I can just introduce the team. You've already done that. There have been a number of changes of personnel within the Directorate lately, and I think this is an opportunity for us to introduce the team and also what we do. What we do hasn't changed, but I think that some of the people that are doing it have changed in the last, or has changed in the last few months. During that period, as you'll be aware, but I want to say it once again, we've had a very successful Estin inspection, and I'd like to thank you personally, Chair, for the role you played in that, because it was a joint effort across all the councils with members and officers, and it was a very good reflection on the services provided by this council to our schools and the partnerships we operate with others. So, a pleasing report. We're not going to rest on our laurels. There's always work to do. There's always ways we can improve and develop, and we're looking forward to doing that and working with you to do that.
Thank
I think
you
it's
very
over
much.
to Helen.
Helen.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, thank you for those kind words, Councillor Smith, in terms of the inspection report. Obviously, as Director of Education, I'm immensely proud. And because of the restructure we've had in our education department, it's timely really for the scrutiny panel to see some fresh faces. And we have new heads of service and new managers, two of which are in the room with you today, Chair. So I think it's appropriate to ask them to talk to the reports that they've written really in respect of this item.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. Could I say to Robert about the Estin inspection, thank you for the kind words for the work done by this committee, and I thank the people who were involved with this committee last year, because it was a good report. We hopefully played our part, and I see ourselves as being a critical friend. And I think that was something Estin picked up, that we were positive about everything, but we were nevertheless that critical friend, and I think that certainly helped. Could I welcome Rodri and Sarah? And I don't know who's going to go first, but
Okay, yeah, so the start of the report is around our inspection of local government education services, which took place in June. And yes, it was a really positive inspection. It takes place in two parts. So first of all is a week where the inspectors come in and talk to a range of stakeholders as part of a preliminary visit. And that includes our head teacher colleagues, our colleagues from social services and other directorates, Gower College, Partneriaeth, our regional partnership, trade unions, the diocese, the health boards, our parent care forum as well, who we work closely with on certain things, including additional learning needs. So they have a wide range of views before they actually come in for the core inspection week. The core inspection week itself, there's a range of interviews, including with yourself and the role of scrutiny, but it falls into three sections. So the first one is around our outcomes, where they take a really in-depth data analysis. The second, then they come up with local inspection questions for us under the area 2 of the framework. And then the third area is around leadership. And there are a number of interviews across the week for them to make an analysis really of how well we do as a local authority. there's not judgments on categories anymore. So previous inspections that we had, you'd have had things like excellent, adequate, etc. But they don't make those determinations anymore. The content of the report is where they explain their findings. They make a single judgment of whether a local authority is of significant concern, and Swansea didn't fall into that category. And the report was published on the 1st of September, and we were invited to produce 2 case studies. And an update on that is that our first case study will be making its way to Weston, who will be featuring that in their annual report as well, around the work we do on school improvement. So they wanted to highlight one of our case studies sooner rather than later. We do have 2 areas of recommendation. The first is around post-16 provision and the choices around that, and we have strategies under development already in order to address that, and that was happening before. And the second one is around our Welsh medium offer across the authority, and again our Welsh and Education strategic plan addresses those concerns, and we'll be taking a delivery plan forwards as well. So that's a general overview really of the inspection itself. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. You any questions to Sarah? That's all. Mike.
Yeah, thank you. It's not so much a question, but just picking up on the general point that was made and Sarah's overview. Could we as a panel pass on our thanks and congratulations to the Cabinet member and the team for their work in this? Having been through 2 inspections myself in the past, from a local authority point of view, it's I know it's quite a stressful time, but it's important for us to have that external validation of the performance and the activities and actions that we're undertaking. So it's pleasing to see that particular outcome, and I think it would be a good idea if you didn't mind, Chair, to ask if the panel could convey our thanks, and I'm sure that will be communicated via Robert and Helen to all the other members of staff as well.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. I did drop a quick note to the team, but certainly we'll reiterate that because it was a good achievement, because when you look at some of the reports that some areas have, my goodness, this was exceptionally good. Can't sit in our laurels, but good report and a good base to build on, I think, and I think that is important. Any questions to Sarah before we move on? One point I'd make, Sarah, is that you did mention about you've got on the post-16, you've got strategies in place, and perhaps we could dig into some of those or give a bit of a brief on them. Is that possible, or one of you?
At the moment, these are being drafted in partnership, like we tend to do, and what Estin highlighted has been good practice here. So we're working with our partners, our schools, the other local education providers in pulling that draft strategy together. The key strand, especially post Estin, was something we'll touch upon later in the meeting, is listening to the voices of our learners and listen to the voices of those learners in how we shape post-16. And so the provision that's offered across Swansea, both in our sixth forms and in our colleges and in the world of work, to ensure that what's being offered is what our children and young people aspire to join post-16. So that's where we're currently at. I think we're probably a month or so away from having something a bit more concrete that we can share with yourselves as Scrutiny, but we'd be more than happy to do that.
Great, thank you. Then perhaps we can feed that into the agenda as we go on. I can see 2 hands up, and could I ask Helen first and then Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, our post-16 collaboration strategy will be signed off on the 7th of November. So the strategy was already in train at the time of inspection. We have refined it in light of this recommendation, and the recommendation wording points to a review of post-16 provision, but as Rodri has pointed out, is very much aligned to learner voice and learner choice, not a wholesale review of the whole of post-16 provision across Swansea. So it's building on the strong foundation that was there and increasing the amount of collaboration between further education and our schools and between schools themselves. So we look forward to seeing the final strategy being ready to circulate after the 7th of November.
Thank you, Helen. Could I can see Robert is, I'll call Mike first.
It was only just a point. I think we're actually all talking in the same direction, as it were. I didn't see any explicit preference in the work programme to the 2 recommendations. So bearing in mind the timescales, I wonder when we come to look at that item on the agenda that we could consider including that in the work programme a little later.
Certainly. Robert.
Yes, just to say in terms, the strategy is in preparation. You, Chair, will be aware from last session's PDC, the discussions we had there about the post-16 curriculum and indeed the 14 to 16 curriculum, which is a separate piece of work. And I think a lot of those ideas and a lot of what was discussed at that forum will find their way into the strategy. It's still in a work in progress, but certainly that's the general direction of travel.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, so, right.
Thank you, Chair. No, I would really be interested in that. I know a couple of the councillors already know I've got a big involvement in a youth military organisation. I know the Lord Mayor has sort of seen our sort of work as well. And I know that there's a lot of sort of uncertainty, particularly with COVID as well, that I think that's so important that we can help sort of the next generation. So from my point of view as a youth military organisation volunteer, to see what the strategy would be, and perhaps maybe those that have got clubs outside of the school set and how we can perhaps help and harness that maybe. I don't know if that's an option that could be looked at to see if there's anything we can do to sort of assist schools locally as well.
Thanks, Francesca. Rodri, would you like to?
Yeah, more than happy to take that on board. Any opportunity to sort of aid our schools in the work that they're doing, specifically here on post-16, we're more than happy to facilitate that without a doubt.
Thank you very much. Rodri, you were next, weren't you? I think you were.
I think there's one.
I think it's the overview of structure and key priorities.
Yeah, I think
it's there again. You're again.
Okay, I think if there are any queries around the structure, Helen Morgan-Rees will probably be best placed to answer those, but I can certainly give an overview of the report. So the Education Directorate structure was reviewed in light of both the Council's senior management review, but also to look forward to make sure that we're fit for the future really and direction of travel there. So the structure was implemented on the 1st of September, so it's still relatively new. So we did used to have 3 heads of service, and that was reduced to 2 heads of service in a previous restructure, but that 3rd head of service has been now reinstated. And we have 3 service areas of vulnerable learners, planning and resources, and achievement and partnership. So the Vulnerable Learners Service has 3 key teams. So there's pupil support, and that's a wide ranging team which covers education welfare, safeguarding, looked after children, admissions, inclusion, which covers school inclusions, exclusions as well, our home tuitions. That's a large team. The Additional Learning Needs and Inclusion team is also under the Vulnerable Learners Service, which has the additional learning needs provision and behaviour support has come into that team as well from the 1st of September. And then we have Maisteru, which is our pupil referral unit, which is located under that service. The Planning Resources Service has the capital team, which looks after our school's estate in terms of maintenance of the current estate, but also any new capital projects to improve the facilities and business continuity planning for schools. They support that too. The Funding and Information team covers schools and directorate finances, planning of school places and school organisations, so that comes through them. And then the 3rd team under there is the catering and cleaning, who provide obviously catering and cleaning for our schools. So the third service area is Rodri's service area, which is achievement and partnership service. And we have the school improvement team, which covers the school improvement advisors who go out and support schools, the music service, minority and ethnic and Gypsy Roma traveller team that provides support to schools there. And there's a membership of the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education that comes under that team too. So that's a large team. Stakeholder and school support covers school governor support, the Director's General support team, and digital infrastructure for our schools. And then the last team then is my team, which is the education strategy team, and we cover strategic planning and performance, management information systems, all the data systems that support the directorate of schools, and then links to Estin, for example, so our regulatory activity and resilience for the directorate. So that's an overview of our structure. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions to Sarah? Great, thank you very much for that. So I think this meeting is about really giving a bit of a flavour of where we are, and the next meetings and the future meetings will be digging into those to really find out what's going on and how we can sort of move forward. Great. Rodri.
Excuse me, put the microphone on. Onto partneriaeth, the regional partnership across 3 local authorities here in South Wales. Those of you who will have been involved in education in Swansea and South West Wales will have known that we used to have ERU, which is our regional partner, which brought together 5 local authorities, but now we have partneriaeth, which brings together Swansea, Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire. So this is a new partnership, so regional collaboration is designed to promote excellence in all of our schools and settings. So the main purpose of partneriaeth then is to deliver a professional learning service for our schools. We have a key link officer within partneriaeth, Cressy Morgan, and Cressy is then the link between us and partneriaeth. What's happened as partneriaeth's been put in place is that we recognise the need for strong communication between us and the region, but also between the schools and the region, and building up that relationship that allows partneriaeth to complement the school improvement elements of what we provide here in Swansea, but also then so that schools and ourselves can broker the professional learning that is required either at an individual school level, a cluster of schools, or the whole local authority. So really important that Swansea's voice is strong within partneriaeth, and that Swansea schools benefit then from the professional learning offer that partneriaeth provide. Where we go from there, the various issues that you'll see in the brief reports on what they touch upon. So you've got the curriculum for Wales, focus on equity and well-being, cross-curricular skills, obviously Cymraeg, the Welsh language, research, and the career pathways as well. But it's very much about providing schools with what they need rather than what we think they need. So there's ongoing meetings between myself and partneriaeth, between David Thomas, who's our principal school improvement advisor in partneriaeth, but also partneriaeth are now linking directly with our schools as well. Each school has a link officer that they link in with. They tend to meet with the school clusters so that they can plan as clusters and make best use of the provision that partneriaeth are offering. So as I've touched upon, although school improvement, the core school improvement remains with the local authority, and as you've seen from the Estin report, they like the model here in Swansea, and indeed there's that case study on how the model works in Swansea. Partneriaeth is really there to supplement that offer with the focus on the professional development of our teaching staff, of our head teachers, and also that offer around the middle leaders, about the leaders of the future in our schools as well. So very much now it's in its early infancy. The key thing now, as they provide to our schools, we're asking for regular feedback from our schools of what that offer is like. When it's positive, of course, we share that, and we share that with other schools. But if it's challenging and it isn't quite hitting the mark, we have those honest conversations straight away with partneriaeth about what Swansea schools need. Of course, then there's that wider collaboration and opportunities with the other 2 local authorities, which is always a good thing. We saw in our preparation for Estin how good it is, as you mentioned, Chair, to have those critical friends. We brought critical friends in from the other two local authorities in the lead up to the inspection, and post inspection now. All of a sudden, other local authorities want Swansea to be their critical friend and to learn from our experiences, both in what happened with Eston, but also in how our schools have developed a new curriculum as well. So, as the Cabinet member touched upon, it's important here as well that we don't rest upon our laurels. Education is a moving beast at the best of times, so it's important that we continue to move with that, but also that we support our head teachers and senior leaders in our schools with that, and where possible, minimise that administrative burden on them by providing them with that support and professional developments that they're looking for at that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Any questions?
Sorry, just slightly clearer on partneriaeth. So that is the professional learning service for teachers and head teachers, and you offer them what, a support service? It's different from unions, obviously.
Yes, very different from the unions in that this is all about providing them with their professional development. So any courses and learning, bringing expertise in from outside of the local authorities, whoever are the experts in their field, bringing in case studies of excellent practice elsewhere in Wales so that we can learn from that and work with the schools then to ensure that they continue to develop professionally and offer the best for the children and people.
So if the teachers feel like they need extra support or extra ideas, etc., you're there to kind of help them with that.
Yes, we can broker individual support or as groups of schools, or even the whole of Swansea in the build up to the new curriculum. There were some things that was new for everyone, so there would be a sort of a whole school approach where you'd have representatives from schools out for a day and a half possibly. So they're collaborating then on how they were developing the new curriculum in their own schools as well.
And other teachers, are they liking that? The head teachers, have they had some positive feedback?
Yes, some positive feedback so far, which has been good to hear, because I think it's been a challenge not only because of the pandemic on professional development, but also of what the previous offer was. But focusing on the partneriaeth offer now, as it currently stands, we're hitting the right marks. But again, it's about not resting on your laurels, and it's about understanding what schools need, but also what they expect from it as well. Because I think there was one head teacher I was talking to where they'd gone into a training session or a development session and hadn't really understood where it was pitched. Whereas we had really positive experience from a lot of people that attended, then that certain individuals thinking, actually, I was already at that level, so I was looking for that something a little bit further. So again, it's about that listening, but being clear on what the expectations are from the offer as well.
Great, thank you. Could I call Helen and then Robert? Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the relationship between the local authority and the new regional partnership, obviously the local authority retains the statutory function to monitor and evaluate the performance of schools. That very much sits firmly within Swansea as a local authority. And as Rodri has said, the partnership, really called Partneriaeth, is very much complementing our work, but it does have distinct functions that have been drawn out in a new legal agreement. That the clarity around those functions is much better than it was in the previous arrangements, and that function to develop leadership on continuum that is in line with national expectations. So a lot of the expectations for teachers and leaders in our schools in Swansea these days come from a national perspective. That's also aligned to the new curriculum for Wales and the new professional standards for teachers in Wales and the new professional standards for leaders in Wales. So Partneriaeth delivers a lot of that for us. So we rely on them to support us with professional qualifications, for example, for headship. They do that, and they also support middle leadership training. The other element I wanted to focus on really in terms of the role of this scrutiny panel and the link to Partneriaeth, there is actually another scrutiny panel that looks at Partneriaeth as well. And that's a joint group of councillors from each of the constituent councils of Partneriaeth come together following the joint committee, and the joint committee really is the decision-making body in relation to the new regional arrangements. And then the regional scrutiny councillor group after that, So there's an element of challenge and external kind of view on the work of partneriaeth in a different committee as well. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Helen. Rob.
Yes, just to echo what Helen said, and to answer your specific question, really, I think that what partneriaeth does needs to be seen as part of a much wider, bigger equation. A school would work with us as a council to identify its priorities. There are local networks that are between pairs of schools. There are networks across clusters of schools that would address the kind of issues that you described. And then partneriaeth is an extra tier to provide extra support on top of that. And as Helen said, it's got responsibility for delivering specific programs that it wouldn't make sense for us as an individual authority to be trying to do. So I think it's getting the best of both worlds, really, doing what we can locally and also being able to access the support of partneriaeth for that broader input where that's appropriate.
Great, thank you, Robert. If I could say, as you mentioned it, we used to have ERU, and I know I personally was very critical of some of the work that ERU did, but partneriaeth has seemed to have learned all the lessons actually, and you know, it's about chemistry, and it's about working as Rodri just mentioned, and Helen and Robert, in partnership with the schools and taking people with us and so on.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, if I may, Chair, because, you know, before Hero, you had Swamwhack, and some of us remember that beast. But, you know, changing the name doesn't change the structure of the organisation. It doesn't change the way it works. So I think partneriaeth is a very different animal. It's set up with specific objectives. And I think, you know, the authorities that are part of that are working on other projects together, and I think it does have the potential to meet our requirements a lot more closely than either of the previous iterations, and there might have been something before that, I don't know.
Great, thank you. So certainly with partneriaeth, we met two people from each authority, two councillors from each authority, actually met up the other day, and it was Councillor Peter Black from Swansea along with myself. So Peter is chair of the Scrutiny Programme Committee and me as chair convener of the Education Committee, and then you were two reps from Carmarthen and two from Pembrokeshire, and I was actually elected chairman at that meeting for the next 2 years. Hugh Murphy from Pembrokeshire is the vice chairman. Interestingly, what we are going to be doing is obviously scrutinising what partneriaeth does, and it was Peter Black's suggestion is that we look at a priority. There are 6 priorities, and we will look at one priority each meeting, amongst other things, and also there are things that they have to do, and there's about a list of what they call the risk profile. These are things that have got to be done, and if they don't work, then we've got to act, and we're going to be looking at that at every meeting as well, amongst others. But what we can do is to share that programme with you as well, to members of this committee, and please, if you have any suggestions that you want us to include in that, please let us know, because that is important. But certainly the body, everything I've seen so far, gosh, it's a mile away from where we were, and I mean in a really positive way, because you know, it certainly, I felt, wasn't working before. So that is really good news, and also our teachers and heads and staff and the departments are really positive about it, and I think rightly so too. So great, thanks. Any questions on the points that Rodri made? No hands up. Great, thanks. The next item on the agenda, it's Rodri again. It's the Rodri Jones show there. It's the Pupil Voice Manifesto.
Thank you, Chair. I'll apologise before I start. This is when I start to get really excited and enthused in my job. Once we start talking about the pupil voice and the role of our learners in what happens here in Swansea. So, from memory, I think nearly all, if not all of you, were present in the council chamber here in the Guildhall on the 7th of July. where we heard from our pupil voice professional learning community with representatives from all our secondary schools presenting their pupil manifesto to Swansea Council. I've got to say, in my 17 years of working in Swansea Council, that evening was probably one of my highlights, to be honest, to hear how articulate the children and people of Swansea are from across all our schools, and with the key messages that they gave to all council, but also to us as officers in what's important to them. What we also see there is what's important to them is important to us, and which is why it's now good to talk to you about what happens next from now that we've received the pupil manifesto from our secondary pupils. So as you know, we're now approaching a time where a new corporate plan has been devised for Swansea, and the key message to give is that we're making sure that the voices of children and people are being heard loud and clear in how we shape our corporate plan. But also in education, one of our key documents of Abertawe 2023 is now being reviewed, and so we'll have Abertawe 2027, which will align with the corporate plan. And what you'll see again there is the voices of the children and people of Swansea clearly articulated in that plan in what our priorities are in education. So as you will have heard on that evening, the important things for them were around the safety and feeling safe in our communities, improved sports equality and facilities, mental health, climate change, equalities, LGBTQ+, substance abuse and vaping, and visible and invisible disability awareness and equality. All areas which I'm sure collectively we'd agree are massively important to us as a council, as well as our children and young people. One slight correction to my brief update in the report. The event that was being arranged for the 18th, we've moved that now to the 21st. And that event will be held at the Waterfront Museum here in Swansea.
Event is, Rodri?
That event is the first opportunity pre-COVID for us to bring representatives of children and people of Swansea together to various workshops to plan further on what we'd already discussed with secondary, but also start hearing the voices of our primary school pupils as well. So it nearly coincides with International Universal Children's Day. So it's an opportunity for us to celebrate really the voices of our children and young people, feed back to them. They gave a request in the meeting on the 7th of July, and we gave a commitment that they said, and this is what we've done. So to give them an idea of what's already taking place in Swansea based on their priorities, but also to see what else is, if that matches then with the voices of our children and young people. But the key thing for me personally that will come out of this day is hearing from the children and people of how they want to be communicated with by us as a council. It's easy for me to sit here and think, I'll put something on Twitter, I'll put something on Facebook, there we go, children and people have been spoken to. We need to hear from our children and people. Where do they find out that information, and how do they need it? And I'm sure it'll be very different to how I envisaged it. In my head, I still see myself as a sprightly 15, 16-year-old, but unfortunately, I've got to admit that I am now 44 and I'm not down with the kids any longer. And even though I have a young family myself, and they will tell me that I'm not as cool as I used to think I was. This is an opportunity for us to really understand what's the best way of getting them involved, getting them interested in the politics of Swansea, in how Swansea is run, in what changes take place in Swansea. They are really interested, as we saw from the young people that presented, that they're massively interested in what's happening, and they're massively interested in impacting change in Swansea. But it's important then that we keep that conversation going, that we feed back to them in a way that works for them, rather than providing a PowerPoint presentation or a report. It might be a short video clip on TikTok, for example. That's what they might be coming back to us with. But it's finding the right ways of communicating with our children and people. So I see them as exciting times, Chair, and I'm sure yourselves will keep us on the agenda in future meetings to make sure that we're delivering for the children and people of Swansea. But happy to take questions, and look forward to involving you as well in future events.
Great, thank you very much, and perhaps we can invite some of the Pupil Voice committee to this meeting or whatever, so that we can do something. I know Robert wants to come in before he comes in. What I would say is that I think it's really important that we do listen to young people. I certainly do. And comprehensive school in my ward at Bishopston, and they came up with an idea the other day, which is quite extraordinary, and that was they wanted to do a flag raising every month on different issues like environment, on climate change, and so on. And I actually funded that for a flag every month for the next year for them from my community fund. And they came up with the ideas. They're coming up with that monthly thing. And what they're going to do is to take that out into the community. So when you say getting involved in the community, they are thinking of the idea, they're doing the flag raising and taking that out. And how good is that really? Sorry, Robert.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm even older than Rodri, and in fact, I'm 49 and 60 months today. Work that one out. But no, I mean, you were all in that presentation in the council chamber, and how articulate and how clearly well thought out that presentation was by the young people who came. As Rodri said, those priorities and the issues we identified, they need to be addressed corporately. They're not just part for this directorate. Issues like sport development, mental health, all those community safety, all of those issues call for the whole council to work together, and we will be adopting a whole council approach to responding to those. And that's alongside what we ourselves as a directorate will be doing. You know, one of the things, learner voice within education, learner voice within learning, is a theme, a strong theme in the most successful systems. And I think that's something that is becoming embedded within the way we work in Wales. And it's certainly, I hope to be something that's going to be, that is embedded and will become even stronger in Swansea schools.
Great, thank you, Robert. Any comments, anyone? Angela.
Well, I too like to think I'm still down with the kids as well. And we'll have to get a TikTok video going for your big birthday. Just to say that the Pupil Voice Manifesto is a really good idea, and I really enjoyed seeing that in full council as well. And it's encouraging to see that you also want to keep the conversation going, because it's great.
Thank you, Angela. Could I call Sandra and then Mike?
Yeah, I think we all get that buzz, don't we, when we hear from the children, and we always want to sort of, to work alongside them. To put a little bit of a concern on it, of course, the children that we are talking to are the bright, articulate, forward-thinking children who want to engage. My question would be is, at the other end of the scale, those that don't particularly engage, that are possibly disaffected with education and so on, how or what efforts are we making to engage with those young people? And I think that will be a particularly pertinent question when we get to the post-16 agenda, and the question is the choice post-16 and so on. So you can probably see where I'm going is what about the silent ones that aren't really on board with us?
Yeah,
Sorry,
happy to answer that one. You're absolutely right to highlight it. And one of our focuses that we've already started discussion on is the quiet voices, as we call them. So we're discussing with a couple of other local authorities how they've approached it with online apps, etc., and various iterations. But you're absolutely right. When it comes to the public speaking and stuff like that, it tends to be a certain cohort of pupils from school that get involved. So it's really important that we hear those quiet voices. Interestingly, in my visits to schools now, specifically primary schools this term that they've been going to, and how they're involved in pupil voice, and sort of to the outside world, sometimes you think, oh yeah, there's a school council, etc. But now there's various groups for different things, but be it the eco council and stuff like that. So in most primary schools now, in small primary schools, for sure, nearly all pupils are involved in some kind of group to get their voice heard. But you're absolutely right. There's a need for that corporately for us to hear those quiet voices, and it's not lost on us. You're absolutely right to raise it, and it's something we're going to be focusing on.
Absolutely, because schools are an important vehicle, but they're not by no means the only vehicle, and I think that's been taken on board by us as a council, and not just by education.
Great, thank you. Could I call on Mike and then Helen and then Yvonne?
Thanks. It might surprise you that I can actually get down with the kids. It's getting back up afterwards I have problems with. But as far as the comments that we've had, I think it's so important that we engage with the pupils, and I suppose it depends on how ambitious we want to be, in the sense of we have parent representatives on this particular scrutiny committee. Could we actually think in terms of having some form of pupil representation as well? I just wondered whether, and also as far as the work programme is concerned, whether we come back to look at this in more detail. I know I'm adding, or we are adding to the work programme, and placing extra pressure on Michelle and her colleagues, but I think it is an important area.
Excellent idea, Mike. And I think it is, if that's possible, then we need to do that, to involve young people in what we do here as well. So thank you. Yeah. And I think the programme, and we'll come on to the programme, is a moving feast. And I think there's an opportunity to add, and it will change as the year goes on, as you know.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Councillor Joy, I think Councillor Smith has alluded to the fact that other parts of the council have other ways of encouraging participation in terms of more marginalised learners, and that's encouraging in its own right. Also, just to note, when Councillor Smith and I conducted a roadshow to speak with secondary school school councils, that provided this catalyst really for the pupil manifesto. I think Councillor Smith and I were quite impressed with the way these school councils represented their learners and the diversity of those learners within their school community. We were quite impressed that they were quite ethically informed, and they'd developed their citizenship skills, and that they were speaking up for the little voices. And we were quite impressed with that element, which we didn't expect to see at the time, but it certainly manifested itself time and time again, where the members of the school councils were very articulate and spoke really well on behalf of some of the marginalised learners as well.
Great. Thank you, Helen. Hi, Yvonne, would you like to?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was just to add about the silent voice, that one of the schools I'm on, everyone is given the opportunity, and as Helen says, there are those that speak up for others. But one of the things we've done is like buddying. So the silent voice or the shyer person will say to her colleague or her buddy what it is that they want to say. And then they're encouraged because they recognize that they are the quiet ones. So that's another way that their voices are being heard, and is to be encouraged, really, that even if they don't, there is someone who speak up for them. So I was just going to say here that for some schools that is already recognized and being dealt with.
Thank you, Yvonne. Excellent point. Anybody got anything else they'd like to add?
Sorry, I'll be really quick. Actually, I remember the pupil manifesto. It was actually my son's first birthday in council that night, and hopefully he won't remember that I didn't attend, but I did make up for it afterwards. But one thing I did notice, and I think working with young people in a voluntary capacity, it's so important to listen to them. Not everyone is going to be a top doctor or a teacher. It doesn't matter what they want to do in life, but it's giving them those sort of that ethos of work hard and it pays off. Doesn't matter where you want to be in life, but it's providing that best start in life, so that they are a good citizen, and hopefully we can retain them in Swansea, provide those jobs. But one thing I did notice is, maybe I'm biased, I did go to Fenoni, probably because I'm dyslexic. My parents knew that I would probably get lost in the system. Can we offer that opportunity to them to become involved? I know it comes under a different with regards to the education, but I think it's really important that we get their voice heard for the future of Swansea as well.
Okay, thanks, Francesca.
Yeah, more than happy to look at that. It's important that we hear the voices of all, and obviously when we talk about pupils who aren't in mainstream schools, there's other children beyond that we'd look to get involved, those that are homeschooled, etc. So hopefully by looking at obviously probably the Whanone one is probably an easier one, but then when we talk about the quiet voices, we need to be looking at those that are homeschooled as well, so that we're making sure that the voices of all the children and people.
I think, that calls for a whole council approach really, and if that's can be taken forward effectively. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Francesca. Anybody else? Good. I think quite an interesting session actually, and insightful really of what's going on, and obviously yes, we'll have an opportunity to scrutinise that work and move it forward. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda then is the draft. You've all seen a copy of that. As I say, it's a moving feast, as people who have been a member of this committee before will know, and we add things during the course of the year because things will crop up, and we can add those in. A couple of things I'd suggest. One of the things would be to add pupil voice to one of the sessions here, and also if we need to look at how we can involve the pupil voice in the work of this committee, and possibly to get some of their representatives to attend. The second thing is on meeting 5, which is on the 19th of January. So we'll have had Christmas and now we're into next year. So it's about a school visit, and I was wondering, be guided by Helen and Robert, is to possibly visit a comprehensive school, but include representatives from their cluster into that as well, so that we can see, because obviously for those who are new to the committee, as you know, each comprehensive school has a cluster of primary schools around it, and maybe a representative from that cluster, representatives from that cluster, as well as the comprehensive, to see how that all comes together and works. But I'll be guided by Robert and Helen, and I can see Helen's got her hand up already. And so has Yvonne. I don't know if it's historical in Yvonne's case or it's a new one. Helen.
Sorry, mine's historical, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of
Yes,
the 14 secondary schools we've got in Swansea, I guess
no,
understanding.
Yes, I was on a meeting. I'm in a meeting. I was talking to someone else, but go ahead.
Understanding the purpose of the meeting at the school with the cluster, have you anything in mind in terms of the scope and purpose of the visit?
Probably, obviously, it's up to the committee, but I was just thinking possibly how the cluster is operating, because obviously with the new curriculum, each primary school is entitled to a degree to do their own thing, and how all that comes together with the comprehensive school, and to see how that actually operates.
Just for clarification, Chair, if you don't mind me putting in, is it so you'd be anticipating just members of staff rather than us meeting any pupils at that point?
I think that would be members of staff at that one, yes, for that particular visit. But I say I'll be guiding on you all. We can certainly include at the end of it possibly meeting some of the pupils as well, as we've done in the past, as you know. Robert, do you?
Yes, I mean, we've encouraged schools to work in clusters on implementing the new curriculum. Transition arrangements are a very important part of what we do. So I think, there are opportunities there, and I think it would be a worthwhile exercise to get the views of primary and secondary schools and get them together, see how they're working in partnership, the extent to which they're collaborating, and the relationship with them. One of the things a new curriculum offers is an opportunity for a lot more discussion between secondary and primary schools. There's pedagogy and teaching and learning, those kinds of issues that expertise press in both sectors, and I think is creating that seamless system, which we've been talking about for years. And I think we have got an opportunity to do that with a new curriculum more than ever. So I think, yes, I'd welcome that suggestion.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Helen's got a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, not all our schools in Swansea are implementing the new curriculum as of September this year. So I think it would be wise maybe to focus on a secondary school that has started to implement this year. So there was an option for all secondary schools across Wales to implement early in 2022 rather than 2023. So potentially your area of focus could be with a secondary school that's already started the implementation phase.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and obviously involve the primaries with that then. And possibly, I don't know if you could suggest a particular school comprehensive in that cluster, Helen?
Yes, I'll need to go away and think about that, Chair. I'm not going to do it on the spur of the moment. I'll need time to consider, come back to you if that's okay.
No, absolutely. But I think, as Robert said, I think it's quite important, and it'd be quite useful to see how that cluster is working along with the comprehensive school. Has anybody got any comments or anything they'd like to add to the work programme? I've only got one suggestion, and I did suggest it at the end of a PDC, which is the Corporate Development Committee, a little while ago, and that was around cookery in schools, because what is actually happening around that? And when I mean that, I mean children being taught to cook. Because I've noticed that when you go to a supermarket and you look at the people in front of you and you see all these ready meals and they cost an absolute fortune. And, you know, are we teaching people to cook in some schools? And if they are doing it, what's happening and how that could be developed? Because you could, at a stroke, when we talk about the cost of living, halve their food bill overnight if we actually got you know, that actually working. And I can see, before I follow that on, I can see Beth coming up.
I was just going to say, my daughter was in a cooking competition today as part of the Earth, and I know they've got sort of brand new kitchens and things in her primary school. So I know there are cooking lessons going on because my daughter does them. So just to reassure you.
Great, thank you. But could we possibly add that to, you know, later on in the year, so that we could look at that and see what is happening and how, if anything, it could be developed? Angela.
Yeah, I would support that as a catering student. Learning lemon meringue pie and pavlova would be better to learn some healthy dishes. So yeah.
Any other comments? No. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. The next item on the agenda is the individual school ESTIN inspections. That is really for information and to note. So I don't know if anybody does have a comment on them, though, in particular. Otherwise, no. Okay. No hands up. Thank you. And the only other item on the agenda is to note the next meeting, which is on Thursday, the 17th of November. And thank you all for attending. Thank you all.